Welcome to NTD China News. I'm Karen Chang. Making headlines this Monday, April 8th. Chinese leader Xi Jinping opens the Boao Forum. The World Health Organization says there's no need for panic over China's bird flu. And a rights lawyer speaks out after being detained by a court last week. It's a major meeting of some of the biggest economies in Asia, and it happens right in China. Over the weekend, Chinese leader Xi Jinping talked about some major challenges for China looming on the horizon.
Over the weekend, the Boao Forum for Asia commenced. It's named after Boao, a city in China's southern Hainan province, where the forum is held. It's a high-level meeting of some of Asia's top economies, and China's new leader Xi Jinping made his presence felt. Xi seemed to try and please everyone with his statements. To Asia members, he talked about Asia's self-reliance and the need to break away from the rest of the world as the global economy suffers. On Monday, Xi Jinping also assured foreign companies that their rights will be protected. Foreign firms have been concerned over China's uncertain investment environment, as well as the growing risk to cybersecurity and intellectual property in the country. And in response to reports about China's slowing growth rate, Xi says it's all part of the plan. Officially, the Chinese regime has reported an annual average growth of 10% for several years. In 2010, it dropped to 7.8%, the lowest in 13 years. Xi Jinping said it does not mean we cannot maintain economic growth at a very fast pace, but because we don't want it anymore. Xi implied the regime was purposely slowing its growth rate as part of a shift from an export-driven economic model to a domestic consumption one.
And to the H7N9 bird flu outbreak in China. So far, authorities have reported 21 cases and have shut down a number of bird markets in Shanghai. The World Health Organization is saying that there is no need for panic, though, as there have not been any confirmed cases of human-to-human transmission.
A strain of bird flu discovered in humans for the first time in China is no cause for panic, the World Health Organization said on Monday. There have been 6 reported deaths from the outbreak so far, with 21 known to have been infected.
So far, we really only have sporadic cases of a rare disease, and perhaps it will remain that way. So this is not a time for overreaction or panic or that sort of thing.
There have been no reported cases outside of China.
But now that the virus is identified, laboratories can now look for it specifically. So we would expect that in neighboring countries as well and other places, if there are serious unexplained cases of influenza, they would now begin to look for this virus and we would see. But we know so far still that it's limited to only a small number of provinces, even in China.
The H7N9 bird flu outbreak has caused worldwide concern, with many Chinese questioning why it took so long for authorities to announce the new cases, especially as 2 of the victims fell ill in February.
Last week, we reported that a Chinese human rights lawyer became the subject of a rescue mission himself after a court in Jiangsu province detained him. While despite announcing he would be in detention for 10 days, the court released Wang Quanzhang early after widespread pressure from more than 100 Chinese lawyers.
Beijing-based human rights lawyer Wang Quanzhang was released by a court in Jiangsu province last Saturday after a chorus of condemnation over his detention. Wang was defending a practitioner of the Falun Gong spiritual practice last Wednesday when he was charged with disrupting court order. Wang took a photo of a document he was asked to hand over to the judge. He took the photo because it was his only copy.
The judicial detention is at the discretion of the judge and doesn't need to follow any legal procedure.
Rights group Frontline Defenders believes he was detained because he defended a Falun Gong practitioner. The spiritual practice has been persecuted in the mainland since 1999. Wang is one of many lawyers who have themselves faced persecution after defending Falun Gong practitioners.
China's lawyers have gradually awakened. In facing various forms of suppression, they have all realized that, without resistance, all legal rights are just empty promises and mean nothing at all.
After Wang's detention, about 140 lawyers from 23 provinces wrote an open letter to the court demanding his release. Wang was released early, and he says it was because of the widespread support from fellow lawyers. The court's official response was that Wang's detention was a warning and that it had already served its purpose. Wang was asked to sign a repentance statement after his detention. He refused to do so, saying he had done nothing wrong. He's also seeking legal redress for being wrongfully detained.
And coming up after the break, experts warn that China's shadow banking system could bring on the next debt crisis. What else have Shanghai residents discovered floating in their river? And the star of Iron Man 3 is in China ahead of the movie's premiere later this month. And welcome back. Earlier in the broadcast, we reported that the Boao Forum of Asia is currently going on in southern China. One of the main topics for discussion is, of course, the economy. Since the meeting began over the weekend, several experts have warned that China could be looking down the barrel of its own debt crisis.
A debt crisis could be looming for China, according to experts at the Boao Forum on Sunday. While the Eurozone crisis has taken center of stage in the past several years, some warn that skyrocketing local government debt in China has created a, quote, alarming phenomenon, end quote. Hu Shuli, the editor-in-chief of Chinese business magazine Caixin, made that assessment during the Boao's opening day in southern Hainan province. Hu said China's shadow banking system is fueling local government debt, and called for an independent institution to assess government's ability to service debts. So how much do China's local governments owe? At least $3.2 trillion. According to China's former finance minister, Xiang Waicheng, that amount is almost double the official figure for 2011, and Xiang says it could be higher because there is no transparency. Xiang denies the debt is at a critical level because its ratio to GDP is not high. But some argue that the nature of China's local government debt is different to other countries, and this affects their ability to be repaid.
In Western countries, local government debt is true public debt and created on public services or infrastructure. In China, the debt is mostly for real estate investment, but the assets end up belonging to officials. So the debt is for public development, but instead fills the coffers of corrupt officials.
Rising bad debt amongst China's local governments have dealt a blow to China's banking system. Larry Lang, a prominent Hong Kong economist, said at an economics summit last month that 10 out of 16 listed Chinese banks have recorded stock prices going below book value. This hasn't happened in any other countries. And then there's debt in the shadow banking system. These include private loans and underground financing. Lang estimated that as much as $4.8 trillion of shadow banking debt exists in the market. On Monday, April 8th, at the Boao Forum, billionaire investor George Soros warned that this shadow banking system is rapidly expanding. He said that it's, quote, of utmost importance that Chinese authorities bring it under control, not just for China, but for the world, end quote.
China and Australia are set to announce a new currency trade deal. The Chinese yuan will be directly traded into the Australian dollar instead of using the US dollar as a go-between. On April 10th, Australia joins the US and Japan in being able to directly trade in the yuan.
Australian Prime Minister Julia Gillard announced in Shanghai on Monday a new currency exchange program with China. She said China has authorized 2 major Australian banks to be market makers for direct trading of China's yuan and the Australian dollar. The banks chosen are the Australia and New Zealand Banking Group, ANZ, and Westpac Banking Corporation.
Tomorrow there will be a formal announcement that Australian dollars can be directly traded into renminbi, into the Chinese currency RMB here in China. The third currency in the world to do so, after the US dollar and the Japanese yen.
This is another small step in China's campaign to increase international use of its currency. China has launched other new currency pairs in recent years, including the Canadian dollar, Malaysian ringgit, and Hong Kong dollar. The deal is meant to help promote business between the two countries by allowing trade without using the US dollar as an intermediary.
This is a huge advantage for Australia, not only for our big businesses, but also for our small and medium enterprises that want to do business here.
China is Australia's biggest trading partner, with combined two-way trade of $120 billion.
In a seemingly endless string of things washing up dead in China's rivers, a quarter-ton of dead fish have just been pulled out of a Shanghai river. That's after 16,000 dead pigs were discovered in the city's Huangpu River, a significant source of drinking water for the city's residents. Now, about 550 pounds of dead fish have been found on the shore of the Xi Jinping pond since April 3rd. It's a man-made pond in Shanghai's Songjiang district. State-run China Daily, citing an official from Songjiang water authorities, said the fish might have died from illegal fishing using electrocution, poison, or even drugs. Authorities have ruled out pollution as a likely cause and say the water is safe to drink. The news comes as the city grapples with an outbreak of an unusual strain of bird flu. At least 4 people have died in Shanghai so far from the H7N9 virus. And finally, movie lovers in China got a special treat over the weekend. Robert Downey Jr. made a visit to the Middle Kingdom to promote the much-anticipated Iron Man 3.
The terracotta warriors are out of a job. In China, when people want an ironclad soldier, they look to Iron Man. Robert Downey Jr. was in China on Saturday to promote his new movie, Iron Man 3.
I think it's always bringing new talent into the situation, bringing new storylines and challenges. And I love movies, and when a series of movies gets boring, I'm very disappointed. So I feel it's my duty to try to keep the material and the characters and the cast and the story fresh.
At the Forbidden City, once home to the emperors of China, Robert Downey struts his stuff next to a towering replica of the Iron Man costume.
People who know me back in America know that I'm very interested in all things Chinese. I live a fairly Chinese life in America.
Beijing-based DMG Entertainment is Iron Man's official distributor in China, although DMG hyped its role to the point where some mistakenly thought DMG co-produced the new movie. Hollywood has been itching to get a foothold in China. The restrictive movie market there is also the world's fastest growing, and that's led to some special considerations for the Chinese market. Rumor has it that Iron Man will premiere on April 26 in China, much to the disappointment of fans in the US. They'll have to wait until May 7th. The Chinese version will also include extra footage that won't be shown anywhere else, including an appearance by Chinese actress Fan Bingbing.
And that's all for this broadcast of NTD China News. For more of our China-related content, visit our website at NTD.tv or subscribe to our YouTube channel, NTD on China. Coming up next is China Focus with Shirley Zhang. Stay tuned.